Hi everyone, and welcome to the Mani Kamra podcast. Before we start, I want to wish you a very happy Diwali. Today, I'm going to talk with Mr. Praneet Singh. Praneet is an enterprising young leader with an unequivocal passion for reinventing education. He is a co founder of two edtech startups in India. In 2017, Praneet co founded a multi million dollar startup called EdQuest, having personally achieved over $3 million of sales, led operations in 15 countries, and served over 150 organizations worldwide. In 2020, Praneet was awarded a fellowship by the University of Pennsylvania in Global Education Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Currently, Praneet is institutionalizing a school of leadership and setting up startup incubators in K-12 market space. This is going to be a very vulnerable and a very emotionally heavy conversation. And I believe if you are listening to this, you are ready for the conversation. So, let's get right to it. Hi Praneet, thank you so much for being on the Mani Kamra podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It is an absolute honor for me to be with you. I always take every chance I have to add value to the world. I am sure that we are going to reach somewhere with this. I am very, very, very thrilled and excited for this.
Praneet, it's always an honor to talk to you. How was your Diwali?
It was very good. So I am not somebody who's too much into these things. However, I respect every festival, every culture there is. And the most beautiful part of this is that there's just something that, there are certain things that bind so many religions together, and what the significance of this one day means to each of us. It is, of course, very different for each one of us, but the good part about it is that there is so much to discover each year about more and more ways of how you can bring happiness to somebody's life. So I think over the years, Diwali or any such day that we really, really celebrate here in India, the whole point of these days has changed over the years from sort of, so I remember being young, and these days were about me and the family and what we could do to make ourselves happy, to make ourselves gratify of who we had become. And over these years, now it is more towards how do we liberate a good lifestyle for somebody else? How do we make somebody else happy? How do we do something about their life that this day becomes the defining point of their life? So over these years, I have observed so much about me changing. Now, all these bigger days are more about how do I play my role in the world and make sure that I use this day as a platform or as a medium to bring about more happiness and more change and more things I can do in the world to maybe feed it, to maybe make it a bit more wealthier, to make it a bit more happier, to make it a bit more pleasant than the world I inherited.
Beautiful. Praneet, one thing that I've always admired and, one thing that always makes me want to talk to you again and again is the way you see the world. I think you have a very different lens. The second thing is the way you describe things. I think the explanation that you gave about Diwali and all the festivals and, how you connected it to yourself. I think that's really beautiful. And Praneet, one thing that I want to talk about. So the first podcast we recorded was with Abhinav. The second was with Sidiksha, and you both
Right.
of them had been like you have been a coach and a mentor to both of them, and then there's me,
Right.
you have been a coach and a mentor to me as well, and then there are hundreds of other people who you have directly or indirectly guided or have been an inspiration, right? Praneet, I'm
Right.
sensing a very strong sense of purpose here, something that you
Mhm.
really want to give back to the community, you really want to guide people, you really want to mentor people. So what is it, Praneet? What is your purpose?
For me, so one thing I'd like to begin with, uh, I think we should do this prior to you shooting at me all of your questions, is that each of these words which you will mention through the course of this 1 hour, uh, I just want to make sure that we all realize that every word has a certain meaning for each one of us. So what any word would mean for me would not definitely mean the same to you. So the word purpose for me is anything I do that transcends my personal gains. That is the meaning that I have attached to this word. And one part of my life, and if there's any way that somebody would want to ask me about my life, I will sum it up in three things. One is going to be values, second is going to be the power of purpose, and three is growth, as in how do you transform yourself. So if you'd like to begin with second, it's more or less say, how do you discover your unique values and what do you do with them to build a world that is way better than the one you inherited? I think that sentence sums up the word purpose for me, as in, uh, like I mentioned you, everything that transcends my personal gains, but also something that I do by virtue of my personal values that can allow me to build a significantly better world each day. Now, we can run through the entire discovery process of how do you actually find your purpose. And once that you do, where does it lead you? And how does it make you better every day to navigate life experiences? And especially because you asked, for me, it has definitely been to constructively impact the lives of every individual that would cross paths with me. Now, when I say constructively, I mean I leave them better than how they were when they first walked into my room or they walked into uh, my office, or when they first had a phone call with me. So I'm trying to do something as trying to coach them, trying to mentor them, trying to make sure that I connect them to all resources that they need. But whether in my firm as the CEO or in almost any role that I've ever taken, I think one fundamental approach to how I look at education is that there's no one size fits all approach. So when I say constructively impact, I mean giving them everything that they need, giving them everything that they require, giving them everything that allows them to significantly do themselves better, to do their part in this world a lot better. Most of the times, whenever I cross paths with somebody, I realize that what they need is something I don't have, is something I may have to educate myself about, is something I may have to upskill myself about, is something that I may have to rejuvenate myself for. Kyunki there's just so much that I want to do for them. And when I can't really sort of give them the best version of myself, I find that I'm not doing my role in this world enough. So I think when in a world where everybody knows their purpose, I think we realize our role as small instruments in this large, giant, cosmic orchestra that we're a part of, uh, trying to sort of improve and build upon the functionality of the world. So here's something about my life, right? The day I lost my dad, I realized that no material gain goes with you, no measure of success goes with you, no amount of wealth goes with you. So then I started to explore what did the meaning of life, you know, where did the meaning of life exist then? And what was life about? And I wanted to find a possibility of discovering something that can anchor my quest in finding meaning to my existence. So here's what I found out. So I read so many different books. I started asking myself, I started sort of giving myself these meditative, mindful spaces. Uh, and I finally found out that the only thing that goes with you birth after birth and lifetime after lifetime, if there are any, is the consciousness. I think all that there is that goes with you is growth. So I started to build upon this and I started to sort of redirect and reorient myself towards making sure that every day I was gaining more consciousness. Every day I was helping somebody else chase not money, not success, not wealth, but growth. As in, I was trying to make sure that, Manik, my goal had become that everything that each of us will ever do, as in myself and everybody who crosses paths with me, was going to be to enhance the human experience, to sort of build upon and raise the level of consciousness in humans, to make sure that we were trying to stretch the whole point of what it meant to be human. So I am just doing my part in it.
Beautiful, Praneet. I think, for every person there happens something. There are series of events that happen which sort of makes a person look inwards. For me, it was a series of a few fortunate and a few unfortunate events that happened when I was in Nepal in January 2020. And you talked about your father's death, and this is a very sensitive topic, but I still want to ask you, how did you navigate through this pain, Praneet, and what came out of it? I also want to tell something. Back in 2010, my dad was seriously ill. The hospitals around us, they said that we can't do anything. There's a very little possibility that he will survive. We eventually took him to PGI in Chandigarh, and even at that time the doctor said that it only a miracle can actually save him. And he was there for almost a month. And I think that was the time when one of my biggest values, that is compassion, started from that event. I actually started valuing the human life. I just wanted to do more and more to make someone's life better, right? So, Praneet, I want to ask you the same thing. How did you navigate, and what came out of it, or what was created after your father's death?
Right. For me, it has been a defining point in my life. I think so. Here's how I look at values. When we began this, I had told you that if there are three things, I definitely make sure that I am addressing each day. They are going to be values, and the power of purpose, and the transformation for me. It has been the defining point of my life since it birthed a lot of values for me. I was very young. It was unfortunate, and it took the better of me, and I didn't really know how to respond to it. But here's what I'm going to speak to you about: values first, and then maybe you and I can speak about how did they birth themselves through this experience for me. Now, when we have certain unanticipated and unique experiences and unusual experiences, unforeseen, untimed, and sort of, they're just never wanted. And when they happen to you, they reveal to you the seeds of what the higher consciousness wants to create through you. So these values are what the universe wants to create through you. They are seeds. They are those seeds. They are the blueprint of your individuality. You can call them soul print. So we realize in times like these, when your values get birthed, you realize that nobody is a clone. Nobody is meant to look or do or behave or think like the one next to them. So we go through certain experiences to reveal to ourselves and uncover our values that I feel are deliberately placed within us to achieve what we're here to achieve, to play a small instrument, like I mentioned to you, in this large cosmic orchestra. So these values have always been there. The values that got birthed at my dad's death were always there, but they were like the unconscious drivers of all decisions that I was making personally and at work. So these are certain peak experiences when you realize what your values are, your peak lows and peak highs, but they give to you an irreversible shift in the very faculty of seeing at life and how you approach money, how you approach growth, how you approach life. It sort of will cause a deep structural shift in the premise of thoughts, beliefs, and actions. And let me tell you that it's irreversible. Life is never going to be the same with certain experiences, because then your values become the healing you give to the world, because you don't want them to experience the pain that you did. And so they can get more of what healed you. So for me, the pain that I went through during my dad's death was more or less because I have always sort of been so harsh on myself. As in, I wanted to spend more time to him. I wanted to give him more love. I wanted to give him unconditional love. I wanted to be there by his side all these 3 years when he was going through his cancer treatment. But when he crossed over, one part of me almost died with him. But the point is that the pain I was going through, I wouldn't want the world to experience that pain. And now that I am on one side, that now I know what is it that healed me, I want to make sure that through my values, I give the world more of what healed me. So, in one way, your values sort of enkindle the pursuit of discovering your purpose in life. As in, so with my dad's death, when he crossed over, one thing that got born within me, like I mentioned to you, was relentless pursuit of growing, a relentless pursuit of growth, of transformation, of learning, of upskilling, of educating myself. Uh, during during the last few months of my dad's life, I was still struggling to sort of make sure that I could balance my work, I could balance my university, and I could also give him time. So turned out that I could not really manage the university bit so well, and so I fell off. So the point was that from that day onwards, one of the strongest values that has birthed within me has been the pursuit of owning your learning, owning your education. So up until now, I upskill and educate myself 8 to 10 hours a day, because so when I was lighting a fire to his body, I realized that there's nothing that goes with man. So there's not even a piece of cloth that goes with them when they cross over. So that left me with a strong realization, a strong revelation that it was just about growth and being more conscious. And what was I doing with it for the world? What was I bringing to the world? What was the change I was trying to enkindle? So that was one of the values. Second was the value of unconditional love. Why was I putting so many brackets, so many commas, so many full stops to my love for him? Or why was I not expressive enough to mention to somebody that I wanted to give him more time, but I just wished he would make more space for me. Uh, how could I express to him that I cannot come to terms with, you know, what is the oncologists were speaking to us about, that he won't live anymore, XYZ, so forth and so on. I just wanted to tell him so much, but I couldn't. So now one value that has birthed through me is the value of unconditional love. And let me also tell you, I have become expressive to a level of many folds. I am so expressive. I'm so direct now. I can confront almost effortlessly. So I am saying, person communicating in me has become so much stronger. I have learned to say no. I have learned to make sure that I am setting my life priorities right. I know what's important, what is not. And so these are some values that God got born within me. And my life has been role modeling a concept that you and I definitely resonate at. It's called the concept of servant leadership. My father's life has been an example of that. As in, everybody who came or who sort of saw us or visited us, spoke to us, he or she was only mentioning the fact that my dad was a servant to a larger cause, and that he changed their lives, and he has been the before after point of their life. So I started realizing that there was more to do with being a servant to a higher cause than there was being a servant to your ego. Now, ego would not mean that you're too full of yourself. Ego would mean you're a set of habits, you're a set of beliefs, you're a set of behavioral patterns. No, that's not important who you are. I think one part of me that died with him and one that got reborn was the fact that I started living knowing that I wasn't supposed to identify myself at any point in my life with some part of myself. I wanted to be like water, like I could fit into any vessel that I was a part of, that I could help anybody coach, mentor, upskill, sort of bring about change regardless of who I had become. There was always more room to learn something additional. There was always some room to know somebody a little extra. There was always some room to love somebody a bit extra. So I decided to keep myself in the back seat, my ego in the back seat, who I had been in the back seat, my past in the back seat. And I decided that day that I wasn't going to be standing in my past. I was going to stand on my past. And so that day changed a huge lot of things for me. So from that day onwards until now, as we speak, I have led by example. I have made sure that there's so much personal mastery that I pursue. Like I mentioned to you, I study, read, educate myself 8 to 10 hours every day. Every day. So I make sure that when I am on the field with my team, I am 10 times than they are. I do a lot. So at my last firm, my sales goal was I achieved about $3 million of sales. My team did about 1.2, which is not a good thing. I am not saying it's a good thing. I am saying if I wasn't the best version of myself, and if I wasn't liberating my highest potential, I wasn't doing enough. And the personal mastery and the leadership by example wasn't happening for them. It was happening because I wanted to hold myself to high standards. I have never expected somebody else to hold myself to high standards, because each time I would fall in that trap, I'd become as good as they were. I never wanted to fall in the trap. I never wanted to have a ceiling to who I was becoming. So I am fluid now. I learn. I relentlessly pursue personal mastery, and I lead by example, and I am a servant to my purpose, my mission, my higher cause. These are some of the things that dad's death left in me. And let me tell you, if you infuse your personal values in everything you do, nobody can replicate your business. They can do the same thing as you do, but they can't do it in the same manner as you do. So I am saying you should find your own seeds and pursue them with integrity. And, and so you will realize that values will act as a moral compass to navigate life decisions. Now, Manik, when you become aware of your personal values, here's what's going to change for you. You are going to be very conscious and mindful of every decision that you make, and it will accelerate the business outcomes of everything you do when you decide with your own values. Maybe half your team will leave, but the point is, when you infuse your business with your values as the founder, anybody who comes to you or flocks to you, or that your company attracts or pulls as talent, they will stick because their values will resonate with you. What you build together is fundamentally going to be a lot better than what you would have when your values when your values do not align with half your staff. So I am saying, when your values get birthed and you recognize them, they become a part of your DNA. Now, they've always been a part of your DNA, but now what's happening is that you have revealed to yourself seeds of what the universe is trying to create through you. Now, these defining points in your life, when you sort of find your values, they prompt an irreversible shift in the mindset. You can't look at the world in the same way anymore. And pain will cease to exist. Success will cease to be elusive. You will always be growing. And I'm not sure if you've heard of this book, but there's a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It says suffering ceases to be suffering the day it finds meaning. So as long as you know that everything happening to you is trying to birth your values, or is trying to reinforce your existential values, or is trying to teach you something, or is trying to make you grow, then suffering is more or less like this stimulus that's trying to confront a part of your identity that needs to leave now because it's not serving you anymore. That's when you suffer. That's when you realize that you've been in pain all this while because there's a part of you that needs to be shed. So, this is how values take place.
Praneet, thank you so much. That is a really beautiful answer. I'm speechless. I actually went into a sort of into another dimension, because the way you were narrating, the way you're describing things, they really touched me. They really moved me. And I also want to thank you for your vulnerability, Praneet. A few things that I really liked first is about the expression, like how we put brackets to love, how we put even when we talk about self-worth, we put a lot of brackets. I will be worthy if I lose 20 pounds. I will be worthy if I score 90%. And I think same goes for our relationships. We associate love, we associate our relationships to a lot of things. If we cross 1 year of a healthy relationship, then we will be worthy. If we pass this test, not very consciously but unconsciously, if we pass this mark, then we will be worthy of being in love. Another thing that really moved me was, your competitors can sort of replicate your product, but they cannot replicate your values. And I think your values give birth to the culture. Like, if you have a founder's mindset, if you have the proper values, and if you infuse them into your workplace, you give birth to a culture which is based on your values, which you have infused into your startup, into your company. and that is something that no competitor, no company can replicate. Praneet, thank you so much. The next thing I want to ask you is, what fuels Praneet Singh? What has been your fuel, or from where do you draw your inspiration, Praneet?
Right. Like I mentioned to you, I realized some 3 or 4 years back that, like any other human being on earth or on this plane, my soul was craving transformation every moment. And each day I would naturally feel intrigued to learn something new, to sort of upskill myself, to sort of do something that was enhancing the human experience. So I realized off late that what gives me the most amount of fulfillment is giving somebody else that feeling. So whenever I facilitate or I try to act as a medium for somebody to achieve what they're truly wanting to achieve, that is what sort of fuels me. Now, here's something that I want to share with you. One thing that sort of makes me upset is that a lot of young men and women that are trying to help, and maybe some of you, we start believing that our deeply conceived ideas for enhancing the human experience or doing our part on earth, or sort of say of redefining what it means to be human, and solving some issue that the world is having, or running our own startups, or making any change in this world, those deeply conceived ideas, when we affix them to a preconceived social or economic identity, we fall into a deep trap. Why? Because the outcome of those identities and the pursuit of going there lies outside of our control. So when I start believing that something I do can only happen if I become somebody, the whole pursuit of doing that lies outside of my control. So I have a firm belief that I'd rather want to do something than be somebody every moment. So I remember the former president of the US, Obama, speaking about this, that worry more about what you have to do than who you have to become. So, what fuels me is the power of my purpose. My purpose allows me to identify every opportunity that is available in every moment, Manik, in the now, every moment that there is to actualize my known potential. And it sort of attunes my mind to always be on the lookout, to discover such opportunities, to discover unimagined possibilities in every moment, to liberate some of my more potential, to discover my zone of genius. So, what solely fuels me is how this incessant, riveting force of purpose, it's always on the lookout. It's always finding something to work on that does effectuate some of my known potential, but also liberates my highest potential that there can be in any moment. So I have always tried to serve any cause there would be or there is to add value to somebody's life. And so when I started my setup called Turentia, I I had a very limited vision for it. I didn't have some very massive, enormous thoughts about where I wanted to go, so forth and so on. I just wanted to help startups grow. I just wanted to help coach and mentor somebody on being a better leader, on nurturing your purpose, on discovering your individuality. I didn't know any more than that. Now, here's what it turned out to be like. Not many individuals were flocking to me like I had imagined. Not many startups were flocking to me like I had imagined. I wasn't getting the number of leads that I had initially imagined. Now, all of this was unfathomable to me because I had never seen a point in my life where I have not been approached by somebody to help them. So I started thinking about what was going wrong, as in, where was I going wrong? Every time I would speak to somebody intentionally, they tell me that that they always sort of find a chance to speak to me. Now if that was the case, and if that was what I was being told for the past 5 years, how could it be that my startup wasn't yielding any leads? So here's what I thought. I told myself this one fine day, I said, my service to this cause, my service to my mission of constructively trying to impact 1 billion people in my lifetime, if I could, I was affixing it to the identity of a CEO at my startup. I was putting brackets to what I could do, and I was limiting what services could I give. And I thought to myself, I said, how can I assume that if I have to impact somebody's life or add value to their life, how is it that they need some coaching from me? Only then can they sort of quench their thirst for wisdom or knowledge or being mentored. So, Manik, the day I shifted my belief set in regard to this, the frequency that I was vibrating at changed. The sort of deep energy that I was unconsciously radiating changed. And I started getting so many different opportunities to serve, to study. First, to begin with, I was offered a postgraduate fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania. That was a big surprise for me. I had never imagined, but it felt so good that they were trying to sort of give me that platform to add value to that group. Now, the group has some 40 odd people across the world thinking about how do we reshape the sphere and the realm of education globally? How do we make sure that as an education related entrepreneur or startups, we were shaping up the trends for where the US wanted to go or Germany wanted to go in the future of the K-12 market space. Second, somebody approached me to start building startup incubation laboratories in tier one schools across India. Third, I got so many opportunities to speak at multiple platforms. So I am saying the point where my mindset shifted, a lot of things fell in place for me. So I am saying to you that sometimes the best thing to fuel yourself is just allowing yourself to vibrate at the frequency of your life purpose. Let it pull towards you every opportunity. There is something unique about knowing and being aware of what your purpose in life is. I think it is the riveting force it has, the magnetic force it has to pull you by default into every opportunity where your values, where your energy, where your persona, where your individuality can make a difference. So now I realize that what fuels me is the fact that every place I am drawn to needs me. And all of it happens effortlessly every day because I choose to resonate at that frequency where I'm just being myself and the world is being themselves. And whoever needs me comes out and seeks for me. And all of this is effortless because I learned, Manik, to embrace my authenticity. I learned, Manik, to embrace the fact that I could not decide for anybody on how they wanted to be helped. This changed because I started being open to every opportunity there would be so I could constructively impact. And here's one thing, I'm not making the most amount of money, Manik, but you will be very surprised when you hear about this. During this year, my mindset and my deeper thoughts about money changed. Money has now become a tool for me which flows to me effortlessly when I need it. Anytime I need to bring about some change in the world, and if I need some money for it, it could be starting my new project, it could be paying my employees, it could be buying a new machine to sort of work in a more optimized manner. Any sort of money which I would require would flow to me effortlessly. That was because my deep energy about money changed. It then became something I wasn't trying to affix to being successful in my life. If less money or more money wasn't helping me grow, then what was the point of it all? So I stopped affixing and linking everything to what I was being paid. And I stepped up, Manik, to every beat there was, which I could resonate with. Every frequency there was with that beat, I stepped up to it. And I are frankly doing so much now. I am partner at a UK bound company in Bristol. I source content for them. I am developing an entrepreneurship masterclass for them. I am trying to set up startup laboratories here in North India and some of the best schools. And I also coach different startups. So there is just so much that I'm doing just because there's been an irreversible mindset shift. So I am saying that the fuel that sort of lifts me every day is just being myself, is the fact that I resonate with my values and that is all I do. I don't have to be better than somebody, don't have to behave like I'm a clone, don't have to act like somebody, don't have to speak like somebody I really like. I just have to play my own frequency. But then one catch to it is that you discover the best out of you every day. So I'm sorry for stretching that, but I just wanted you to know, Manik, that you don't always need pain to grow you. You can espouse some daily practices which are intentional, which are deliberate, but then your soul does not have to smack you in the back of your head every day. Ke chal ut, do something about life, do something about your life. Sort of lift yourself up, buck up, and sort of get out and work. No, you won't need all that. You won't need, like I said, your soul to smack you in the back of your head through pain. I look at pain like that. That pain is just your soul's way of sort of trying to redirect you to a different path. But I'm saying when you and I stretch ourselves and put ourselves into a habit of daily practices which quench our soul's thirst for transformation, you won't have a lot of pain anymore in your life, because then to learn you won't have to suffer. And even if that pain does exist, suffering won't exist anymore, because you will know if this is causing me pain, what is it trying to teach me? So when you become attuned and aware like that, you don't really even need fuel anymore.
100% Praneeth, and like you put this very beautifully, very amazingly. And again, one of the reasons I wanted you to be here on the podcast is because you have such wisdom in your words, in your intention, and I just wanted to put all of this through you, through this podcast, into the universe, because one of the reasons I started this is just want to archive all these beautiful stories. Praneeth, thank you so much for this. And I also want to share something you said about how titles can be very limiting. When I was serving as the CEO for one of the organizations in Nepal, I think the title made me live in scarcity, as not being abundant in my thoughts, in my actions. And in this July 2020, when I was relieved of the position, when I ended my term, I think I like that was the moment when I started actually living in abundance. Now I teach a lot of students, dropouts who are from an underprivileged background. I help a few organizations with various stuff, and all of it is pro bono. I learn a lot. One of the things that has changed is in every moment I do something that takes me closer to my purpose. Now I know what I'm not sure if I know 100% of my purpose, but what I know is I have made some progress. It has something to do with the upliftment of the rural area of India through education. I haven't figured out what is it 100%, but I know what every action, every moment has to be, and that has made me wake up with purpose, made me wake up with a joyful heart every morning, and that feeling is beautiful. This is also one of the reasons I wanted to talk about purpose, because the sense of purpose has, I would say, uplifted me as a person, and it has completely changed the way I see the world. So Praneet, thank you so much for this. This is a like a kind of selfish reason, because I hope we do another, not one but a lot of other episodes on this podcast. But I also wanted to get you and get as much as wisdom and knowledge I can out of you. So Praneet, you have been in this education space since some time now, and right now we are in a very transitional phase globally and nationally as well. Globally there's a pandemic, and I think that pandemic has made a lot of, not a lot of, but almost every educational institute, every educational entity to rethink how we impart knowledge, how we impart education. And nationally, obviously in India there's a pandemic, and there's also the new education policy, right? Just want to know your thoughts, how the school of 2030 in like 10 years down the line would look like.
Right, of course. So I was recently studying a report by the World Economic Forum citing the future of jobs and how the world would look more or less by 2025. So I think part of the sort of jobs that are going to be changing and they say that about 65% of the jobs that exist right now would not even exist anymore. So which means the 65% of the jobs that will exist then do not exist right now. So it is very difficult to answer what you asked me, as in how would the school look like, more or less. We would need to know how 2022 or 2023 looks like, so we can educate our kids to make sure that we can build a smarter, stronger, more efficient workforce for the fourth industrial revolution. However, there are two things I must speak to you about, right? Now, I feel very strongly about the part that with so much technology coming, one of the most important job role is going to be embedding these technologies into our daily lives, right? So
Mhm.
I'm saying that we need to empower these kids who go to school right away in trying to solve real world innovation needs, to make sure we are enhancing the human experience and trying to uplift the whole meaning of of being a human, and to stretch that whole definition of mankind. So that's one part of what kids must know by then, that how do we accelerate the use of technology in making our daily lives more optimized. Second thing, which I feel on the human aspect, is this thing about discovering yourself. I think the world we're stepping into is going to be a hyper connected, hyper competitive world, Manik. And you will be surprised to know that one of the most important skills that report had cited was handling stress. So that was, say, about the seventh best skill or the seventh top skill you will need to be a progressive part of the community. You will need to handle stress and respond to stress better. You would need to be some active learner, which means you have to learn for the entire lifetime, which also means that there's never going to be a time when you'll have to stop learning. But then, one more skill that is really important is learning to learn. If you teach a child how to learn and you let him or her free, they will probably do good. So I call these things metacognition. So knowing about knowing, learning about learning. So when you are aware personally about what you're doing and you are more mindful, more conscious, you make more informed choices. The third part of what it would mean to be part of a skilled workforce, or somebody who is going to be running a startup in 2030, would also entail that how does he or she create that infrastructure for employees to learn every day? So, which may mean that by 2030, the world is going to be so hyper agile, hyper competitive, that you cannot be limited to one skill that you can pursue a mastery over all your life. No, I think so these companies will have to have universities embedded in them, so the student or the child can sort of enter into a company and take up a degree from the company itself, but also have a real life feedback every day, because they're still trying to explore that employability part of them, as in which skills are they naturally intrigued to learn, or how is it that what they learned in the classroom, how does that technology apply when they're trying to code it and sort of make it work. So I am saying you will observe that in 10 years from now, so many things are going to be integrated, and there's all going to be a very cohesive setup where it's difficult to extrapolate one of the two. So there are three or four things that are going to merge. All of it as a system is going to sort of solve human needs. So one part of the school components missing is that we never teach the child the ability to follow. I think all that we do is teach the child to lead, to be the best, which is not an option, of course. To be the best is not an option, but I think unless you're a good follower, you cannot be a good leader. I think sometimes schools have to teach somebody that you may not get the exact title you wanted, but it's not about that. You need to think about the end impact of your work. And when you are aware about the end impact, it should not really make a difference about what role you hold, because here's what's happening. A lot of young men and women from your and my generation feel frustrated when they cannot run their own startup and they have to settle for a job. But that should not make any difference, according to me. It is always about the mission, the purpose, the end impact of your work. So it won't matter if you're funding a startup or if you're running a startup yourself, if you're having a job somewhere, you are employed somewhere, you're serving a different firm, or even if you're a part of research team which is not being paid. Regardless of whatever comes your way, as long as the end impact is serving that mission, it's going to be just fine. So I'm saying less and less individuals should have a moral dilemma of whether I should settle for a job or run a startup. Now, the fifth thing is that, now I might be old school with this, but this is what fundamentally changed my life, and I'm sure that it's going to live on at least 10 years from now, is the experiential development component of any school. I think for any child to develop or learn or upskill themselves or evolve as a better leader, what they must do is learn to organize more and more students around one common issue. So you can also sort of talk about this skill as your social persuasive skills. How good are you at organizing a large community of like-minded individuals like yourself in a school to fight for a common cause? Now, when I was pursuing my fellowship, there were so many kids I spoke to who had been a victim of physical abuse, or they were assaulted somewhere, or they were harassed, or they were sweared at. And there have been so many traumas. There have been so many stigmas that they have grown up in. And one of the things that really saddened me is the fact that the place where they were being schooled at, there were 100 other kids going through the same thing. But all of them kept thinking that I do not have the right skill set to organize a community along this issue, so we can fight it together, so we can find a way out, and we can sort of make sure that there's less social oppression and there's less sort of division, and we live in a more heart-warming and a place filled with openness for everybody, regardless if they were thrown acid at, or the whole school knew if they were assaulted or raped, regardless of all that. So I feel one of the skills that we need to teach kids, maybe in 10 years from now, is social persuasion. You won't believe, but we really look at SpaceX as something which is an overnight sort of story. It's not that. He struggled to find enough workforce who believed in a bold and audacious vision as he had. He couldn't find many, and he was okay with it because he knew, Manik, that the vision came to him and it did not go to anybody else. And there was a reason why that vision came to him. There was a reason why he was selected by the universe to sort of pursue this. Now, you and I can debate about the fact that nobody else got a slight hint of what could be done to sort of facilitate the carriage of payloads to the space, or finding life on Mars, so forth and so on. Maybe a lot many did, but then when he felt like he was the one to pursue, he was never sort of pulled back by his own limitation of not enough people believing in his audacious vision, which is fine. Because here's what happened. When you realize that vision came to you and it did not go to anybody else, you nurture that vision like your own baby. You nurture it and you sort of work at it enough for others to dive in and stay at it, and sort of, for more and more to join in. And how SpaceX is right now. But I am saying there's just so much grief in this world, but also so many bold ideas to enhance the human experience, to lift the human consciousness. But then not all of us know how to rally around these things, which are really important. So I am thinking these should be some of the skills that, so once we get there, so the number 0.5, once we get there, it's all going to experientially help you develop. You will make mistakes, but that will accelerate your curve of learning, your curve of transformation. And like I told you, transformation is a deep structural shift in the basic premise of your mentality, of your thoughts, beliefs, action. And then you can never go back to your old conditioned ways to think or look at the world. Then you're not just talking about what happened to me and why I was the victim and why the whole world is full of jerks. You're talking about what did I do about this? That with all that happened to me, how am I now building a way better world than than the one I inherited each day? So I hope you get that point. One of the fundamental things, Manik, that needs to be taught is that we're not clones. that would not have to sort of, fight a race or run one. We just have to discover, uncover, and reveal our individuality to ourselves. And one thing, Manik, that needs to be taught in this regard is to make sure that more and more kids are more attuned, more receptive, more aware, more wiser to identify their values, to discover their values, to unearth their values consciously. Everybody does uncover their values, but it should happen consciously, it should happen mindfully. They should be aware of the fact that they're not clone. I think a smart school of 2030, according to me, will not have a one size fits all approach when they teach a child. We have this word called creative pedagogy, which means the learner centered approach. Much ironical to what I just mentioned, as how is it, what does that word mean? It's not a learner centered approach even right now. When any school sort of tries to project themselves as somebody who has got a very enhanced way of pedagogy, it just means they are recognizing the mutual needs of most students in the class, but not each and every class. So I think more or less what we'll also have to begin doing is to have a tailored setup for every child to go through in those 8. And I think the timeline is going to be it should be fundamentally reduced. I think we waste too much time in schools. We waste almost 19 years, or say 17, 18 years, just learning, not applying enough. Whereas, by the way, let me speak about this to you now that we're speaking about schools, that in a school, you don't teach how to love somebody. You don't teach how to unconditionally give yourself to somebody, the formless, shapeless love there is. You don't teach that your life and giving somebody love transcends the physical aspect of it. We don't teach them how to approach money. We don't teach them how to approach the concept of success. We don't teach them that life is not about making wealth or having these fancy roles. And we don't, by the way, the most important thing is we don't teach them how to approach religion. I think every school has failed at that school of thought. How do we process and approach religion? What does religion mean? How do you navigate experiences with it? We don't teach them the concept of being in one world. We teach them to condemn how we are racist, fascist, you know, um, so forth and so on. How we divide, it's not good. But then how to be, that's not taught. How to approach somebody who looks different than we do. How do we approach somebody who prays to a different God than we do? How do we live with these differences, knowing that there's some amount of raw energy behind these faces that we carry? So I think the most important part of all this is knowing and sort of trying to teach a child how to consciously uncover themselves and realize who they are and what are the unique seeds that they have, or else they will, like it's always been happening, they will clone themselves. They would want to try to be like the smartest child in the room, and then as they grow up, some of them will try to be just like the most liked student in the room, for all the good things or the bad things.
Definitely, Praneet. And a few other things that you mentioned, I could really connect to. For example, how stress management is going to be one of the top skills that a person, would have. And this is something Abhinav and I talked about as well. The this new age of social media, we have not been evolved for this kind of abundance of content, abundance of access to the internet. one of the reasons why a lot of people prefer going to a college, a university in the West, because they value the experiential learnings, right? Praneet, there's one thing that I truly believe that if we are not a part of the solution, then we are a part of the problem, right? How is Curentia part of the solution?
Right, which is a very good question to ask me, very intriguing, and of course, something that does confront me. So, for me, I'm going to answer this in two ways, right? One way is I'm going through a self transformation journey myself, right? Which means that when you are evolving and transforming in an irreversible manner, my own transformation journey is an environment for those individuals to grow that cross paths with me. And I really envision that with whenever I do what I do, if there's one fuel that helps me stay at my learning acceleration curve, it's, I mean, studying for long hours every day and relentlessly doing what I'm doing. It's the fact that I want to be that environment for anybody to grow the moment they cross paths with me, the moment they meet me, speak with me, hear me out, watch me speak. They want to change. They want to uplift their standards. They want to enhance who they are. And what more could happen? Now, I am definitely sure I'm not there. I'm not sure if I'm doing enough, but I am saying when my transformation journey is highly accelerated, it becomes an environment for individuals to grow, for them to embrace their authenticity, and for them to embark on their own journey of transformation. Part of what I'm also doing is I'm trying to make sure that everything that I envision, so like I answered you in the last question, that how is it that I envision a school of 2030? What does a child look like, and what does he learn every day, and what does he believe, or how does she lead her life, or blah blah blah. I am somebody who's trying to enkindle that. So each point that I make to you, I can guarantee you that I'm doing something about each one of them, starting with what I mentioned to you as the experiential learning component, as in how do they experientially develop as a better leader, as a better follower, as a better servant to a cause, and as a mindful human being in this world who wants to build a unified world, regardless of who looks like them or who does not, which God they pray to and which God they don't. So we're setting up startup labs, like I mentioned to you, so these kids can know, not just pursue something economic. Uh, they do not just pursue something which has a social outcome, but they're also learning to function in a team. They're also learning to navigate their egos. They're also learning to come to a consensus. They're also learning the meaning of democracy, which has been abused over the years. They're also learning the component of founders value and the values that every employee brings to the workplace with their role. So that is one thing which is happening. Two, I mentor different startups, so I'm also trying to make sure that I mentor our generation enough that the quality of kids that they raise, that they raise, is more conscious. The quality of kids that they raise is more mindful. The quality of the kids that they raise are not chasing money or success or anything elusive, anything you watch slipping through your fingers the moment you feel you've caught it just now, like happiness, joy. I want us, our generation, to raise kids that are chasing growth, that chase the power of purpose, of how they can fuel it in all the good times and the bad times. I want the next generation to build a world where we reveal to ourselves what makes us similar as human race, but what also reveals to us that the way we do it is singular. So where we're going as human race is of course going to be shared, but how we make our role happen in the large cosmic orchestra is singular to each one of us. So the sort of dialogues, the sort of sittings that I facilitate with with the startups and with young individuals that I coach, I make sure we're looking at a world where I help them unfold, unearth, and discover the sort of individualities that they carry, make them more aware to recognize every opportunity that fulfills them. And of course, I think part of what I'm doing with my venture is, like I told you, making sure that these guys can communicate better. They can express, they can speak unfiltered, they can express what they want to. Because as long as dialogues are filtered, you won't know what individuality they carry. You won't know the beliefs they carry. You won't know the frequency they vibrate at. And when you don't know, they don't know themselves. So they won't know where they're going wrong. So part of what I'm doing, like I also mentioned to you when I began with this, that I work on myself so much that I become an environment to grow. So if I communicate in a more effective way, now if I lead my venture in a more optimized, efficient manner, and if I carry my individuality, embracing the authenticity I bring everywhere I go, regardless of the job or I'm in a business or I'm in a team that is trying to search, I teach all of these guys to embrace the shortcomings that they have and try to focus more on the strengths they bring to every room they walk into. Now, part of what I want to leave all of them with is that to be a CEO or to be an MD or CMO or these fancy roles, being an IAS officer and so forth and so on, has some luck involved. You know, you can study all you want, you can be pretty brilliant, you can speak as well as you could be speaking, but there is some luck involved. However, the only thing where luck is not involved is in being useful for the world. Now, part of being useful is to update and upgrade your knowledge and your systems of living and models of reality, where you are transforming at the same speed as you'd want somebody else to transform. Part of being useful also is that it's not just about what you know or how much money you have or how much power do you have. It's about how do you wield that for more than just your personal gains. So this is what I try to, sort of spread each day with every dialogue that I have with any young person. Now, we're just doing this, like I said, to raise a more conscious generation than the one we inherited.
Praneet, thank you so much for your answer. I think your answer has unlocked another door for me in my mind because so when you spoke about the things that are missing in the school, like how to love or how to give yourself to someone unconditionally or how to approach a religion, these are things I did not have in my mind. I used to think about, okay, one thing that's missing is spirituality, one thing that's missing is the emotional intelligence aspect. One thing that's missing is how to have a founder's mindset. One thing that's missing is how to manage your finances, how to file taxes. But whatever you spoke is another game in itself. And yes, we are done with today's episode. Praneet, thank you so much for being here. You have
Thank you very
always
much.
been an inspiration. Thank you so much for imparting the knowledge, your wisdom, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
It has been an absolute pleasure for me. And I think we are going to do, and we are going to be looking forward to doing many more of these. And I hope everybody who tunes into this and who taps into the sort of dialogue we had in this podcast, hope we add value to their lives. And I hope we're building a more conscious self with each of these dialogues we have each day of our lives. And I hope we will see each other soon. And again, I am very grateful to you for giving me the chance to speak.
Thank you so much, Praneet. You have been an amazing guest. Thank you, and I hope to do another
Thank you.
episode with you super soon. Goodbye.
Of course, Manik. See you. Goodbye.
So, this was it for today's episode. If you liked it, please reach out to me on my Instagram at the Mani Kamra Podcast. We will be back with another super conversation next week. Till then, take care.